What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Football 360 show again. JP Rock here. Matt, how's it going? Matt Bierman
It's going great.
from Elite Football Academy, Elite Performance, Boom Football, Junior Longhorns coach.
Only one more year of that.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh, there
they're
we go.
eighth grader. It's soon to be eighth grader, so we'll
Yeah.
be timing out of the junior football league.
Interesting. Nice.
Yeah,
nice.
should be fun.
Then
Should
it's
be
on
a
the
fun run.
Then somebody's going to try to put you on their staff so that they can get your son as their the quarterback. The way the high school recruiting's going now.
Yeah,
Right.
We'll see what. Yeah, we'll see what,
you're like, oh, that's not tough.
we'll see. Yeah, he's trying to figure out what his future looks like. Just getting.
He'll have some options.
The end of the school year.
Yeah, he'll have
graduate seventh grade, and we'll see what happens.
That's big on the agenda.
Yeah.
But coming at you live on X as well as YouTube. You can catch us on Spotify and Apple as well. And all things Football 360 at football360show.com as it should be. Big night last night. We avoided the rain. A lot of stuff going on. It is the middle of camp season. And I'm just, I've been at something every weekend. Yeah. Almost, and during the week too, now you got stuff going on. Like last night, Monday was the St. Louis Football Coaches Association showcase, which was incredibly well attended by coaches, which was a great thing to see. In fact, it kind of shocked some of the high school coaches there.
Yeah, there was. From according to Coach Merritt, who was kind of the host with the at the building, because that was where they ran it.
Right.
He came down because we at running the combine, we don't see any of that, right? We only see the kids there, right? So so there's stuff going on at the school. But I did see a pretty steady flow of college coaches going into the building when we were running back and forth to the car to get stuff.
Yeah.
And he came out and he said, I have to be honest, I think there's more college coaches there than high school coaches. And
right.
I think, that is a testament to the last number of years, 3-4 years. There's been some really good quality kids there, and then the coaches are knowing that, hey, this is a good opportunity to come in when I'm in town. And
St. Louis has become a hotbed. Let's face it, this whole state of Missouri has, but St. Louis especially.
Yeah, and so those guys come in, they get to see some of those kids, and what's kind of unique about it is that one, it's not overly hyped because you and I both know, like, we have a 2-hour window to get it in, so because of those constraints, we limit it to anywhere from 105 to up to about 100.
How many kids were there last night?
I think 110, 112, something like that. A few kids couldn't make it because of last minute practices, and I think some people might have gotten scared away by the rain, but we were definitely blessed last night because it just
that little window
right around us.
Yeah. In fact, I texted you. I'm like, "Is this rain or shine?" And you're like, "What do you know us?"
Snide remark.
Yeah, you go, "You know us."
Yeah. Well, and you know what?
We're gonna get wet.
As many events as we do, like outside with like flag football or like 7-on-7, or even just being involved at Lindenwood, you have to learn to like read. That really watch the weather and like start like 5 days out, start to like watch it and see what their predictions are, and then that 24 hours ahead of time is usually pretty critical. And if it starts to go down like it did, then you start to feel like, okay, hey, now I'm going to watch the radar and see what it looks like and what direction everything's coming. So we definitely were blessed yesterday. That was really well attended. It was just a good, beautiful night.
Yeah,
it was really nice.
Yeah, it was. It was nice and cool. Nice little breeze. Like I said, nice little window from downpours, especially out in the hinterlands where I was coming from.
Yep.
And then just opened up and got it in, and it was really good. And I checked the weather like 10 days out of events because I've been at a combine or event every weekend since April, and so I'm starting looking 10 days out just to make sure what I got to do, what I got to bring, the umbrella, the rain gear, whatever it is, and I try to explain to people in my life who are not very interested in football that, rain doesn't stop football.
Lightning is pretty much the only thing
that's the only thing
going to really stop it. Right.
Rain, snow. It's not like that. Yeah.
So at the end of it last night, my son, was bumming around. He got to do some of it and threw some balls and did a little testing. So my wife shows up at the end to pick him up, and she shows up with the coat because it did cool off.
Mm-hmm.
But at that point, you're running around, right? Like you're running around, and so I was very thankful. But I definitely at that point had a lot of.
Oh, she showed up for a code for
me and Brady.
Oh, for you too. Oh, wow. Look at that.
Yeah,
She don't want you to get a chill.
Yeah, but I
you're so fragile.
Politely, I politely
you're like
just
you're
said
like
I got a lot of work to move all this stuff back up.
You're like, honey, the guys are watching.
But you're right. Yeah, JP's gonna make fun of me. But I would say that really well run. DeSmet was a great host.
Yep.
Like, they did an awesome job. They put the lights on so the kids are under the lights. It's just kind of a unique event. Like it's very different than every other thing we're involved with. And like, it's one of those things that, Larry Frost, we'll give a shout out to Larry Frost, who, he's a retired coach. He puts a ton of effort into the St. Louis Metro Football Coaches Association. I think it's one of those things that we probably need to reinvigorate because, over the years, they've always done, when I was a young coach, I would go to Mondays. I would go do the, or what I think it was Mondays. They would have like a coach's, coach's
seminar
clinic, if you will, right? So they'd have guests come in, they'd have refreshments,
and
people would really attend that. But I think they've kind of gotten away from doing those. I think probably a COVID thing.
Yeah,
and
there was there was the 7-on-7 event that was huge for a while there. It was like 28 teams would come in, high school teams would come in, and always well attended. And that they kind of got away from that. I don't know if that was COVID related that it got away from that or not.
Yeah, and so I think, this is an extension of it because it's such a big deal for those kids to get out there, be seen by colleges. Like it
was huge, and they were very interested last night. I will say this because, it was nice being able to mingle and walk around. Mm-hmm. And there were a lot of coaches there. And so you could openly hear who they were, talking about, see who they were focused on. And I do believe a couple offers happened from that. Mike Cunningham from DeSmet, I know, picked up that offer from Colgate. And I don't know if you saw, I'm sure you did. Chris Potter was offered by Mobab.
He laid down like a
4.58
laser 40,
10-foot broad jump.
I mean, yeah. And as we've talked about, like the 40 times and the broad jump usually correlate.
Yep.
Right. And unless the guy's got, like his form is not unbelievable or it's a bad start. But if a guy's a 10-foot broad jumper, 10-foot plus, and he's not like super tall, like he's 5'10" and a half, I would guess.
Yeah. And he's a solid.
But man, he is built.
Yep.
He is prototypical. And interesting, I talked to Coach Macklin, who was there, Jeremy Macklin, who's his head coach. And he made a comment. He said, and then nobody's going to outwork that kid. And you know what? Those are things that why your head coach is there and he's able to tell people about your attitude, working at your high school.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a great thing to see all of that, come to fruition on the field because those kids are working their butts off. And to me, it's kind of the last dry run before you get out to Lindenwood in a few weeks, right?
Yes.
And so we talked to the kids about what are you doing to prepare for this? Don't be surprised when Lindenwood pops up on May 31st and June 1st. Like it's coming, right? Don't be shocked. And just so we're clear, the format is check in, height, weight, talk to JP, do a force plate test. If you're in the group that gets tested, they go up to the you go up and sit in the holding pen, if you will, up in the stands in the end zone stands. Coach Marcus Snozick will bring you down, warm you up. Then you'll go over and it happens fast. It's a quick warm up.
You guys do a great job.
Slide over, get tested, and you do your broad jump, you do your pro agility, you do your 40. And, we get questions all the time. Hey, my coach told me I shouldn't test.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's fine. They may tell you that, but I would also tell you that I have heard
coaches
literally
noted
hundreds of times, college coaches going, why isn't your test score? Are you afraid to compete?
That's the first thing. I
mean, how many times have you heard that phrase?
Especially last night. We wanted to see how they compete here.
Yeah. And how do you handle yourself in line? How do you handle yourself in drills?
Every second that you're there, you're being evaluated. And you need to realize just how you walk, how you move, how you greet people. In fact, I heard a young man came up to me last night afterwards to say hello. And I'm like, did you talk to any coaches? He's like, well, no, sir. I'm like, go over there and say hello. And it was, I believe it was SEMO coach, and had a conversation. And now this young man's not high on anybody's radar, but that coach said, I'm very impressed with you and how you present yourself, and got his information, and boom.
That kid will get invited to their camp. That guy will get invited to their camp.
Yes.
He'll get another look Who knows? He prepares in that time before he goes down mid this summer. You never know, and things change. And
it doesn't hurt that he also ran like a 4.59 40 in the 4.5s at the 40.
Oh, there you go. Right. So those are things. Character, obviously, you have the athleticism. That stuff happens, and those are things that coaches are looking for. And but to your point, like to go over and have a conversation, just so you know, like the one thing is like, yes, if they're talking to another family or another person or coach, wait your turn, but wait there and then have a conversation. And a lot of times kids are like, well, what do I say? What do I say? Well, listen, that person makes their living coaching kids and young men in college football. Introducing yourself is the great first step. And after that, you can have a conversation about who you are. It's also nice to kind of in your head know if you are being recruited. Common question is, hey, who are you hearing from?
Yep.
Do you have any offers? Where are you going to be camping this summer?
Right. What are the schools have you been to?
Yeah, what other schools you've been to? And then those are the things. And, those are great things because that like paints a picture for that coach of who you are. It paints a picture of kind of where you're at in the recruiting cycle. And it probably opens their eyes a little bit when you have answers to those questions, right?
Yep.
And so, but I do think it's interesting when you get a guy like Hoyt Gregory, and we've talked about it a number of times. Carter Burdell was there. There's, Weiscar was there. Guys that have offers and they show up because they want to really compete and show out and get better. And I think there's something to that because people that are afraid to compete hang in the weeds, right? And then they're hoping for offers, or maybe they lucked in or backed into something, right? And so they don't feel like they need to do it. But eventually, you're going to have to do a combine at some point if you're good enough, right? You don't want the next time you have to do a combine or pro day is when you're coming out of college and you've never really taken a real test in the 40 broad jump or vertical leap. Those are things you want to get experience on as a young athlete. And so you can really hurt you if you are you could cheat it for so long. Let's put it that way, right? And maybe if you're not a great high school player and you don't get to go to college, you'll never get to do a 40 time again, or that matters, right?
Right.
And so I think you got to be very, very careful with taking advice that you should not be testing because
and you also just don't want to go by the handheld stuff or the stuff that you do at your high school. Okay, and I'm not saying that it's not necessarily the most accurate, but the equipment you brought the laser out last night, right? It's laser 40. Everything's done, independent and independently verified. At your high school, coaches will listen to that, but they want verifiable, information. Like, last week, what was it? Indiana was looking for a verifiable number on a guy.
Yep.
Guess where? Yeah.
Yeah, he called us and wanted to know, hey, where's it at?
Absolutely. And was able to send them that information.
And that's the kind of stuff that matters because they trust where it's coming from. And like we've talked about, the Zybex Sports, it's not an advertisement for them, but Mike Weinstein, who's a really good guy, shout out to him. I connected with him yesterday, just said, hey, we might be in a torrential downpour situation. We don't want to get these things, trashed. And he went through the steps of, kind of some things to do, tips and tricks to run it in a wet environment. So, he's just a good guy, does a good job. But he also is if you watch at the combine, he's there. It's his equipment being tested and doing it. So he's the kind of guy that he knows what he's looking at. And so he knows testing. That's his expertise.
Yeah, does it perfectly. And last night was really good. Back to Chris Potter. I was talking to Nick, your right hand guy, QB trainer, Nick Sprague, and boom coach. And I said, when I look at Chris Potter, I see a lot of comparison to, and we bring his name up all the time. It seems like, but Cody Schrader. Right. That kind of guy who I could see going to, a D2 school, a Truman State or wherever, and just lighting it up and then getting that opportunity and doing the same thing on the high level because, maybe his measurables don't fit what, a certain college is looking at. And another player was telling me how, a college came to them and was telling them, well, you fit this and this, but you don't fit this, so we're not going to do this because we're looking for this. I mean, that's really what it boils down to.
It does. And the sad thing is there's a lot of preconceived notions about certain athletes, right? And what he is or what he isn't. And, you know, like Coach Macklin summed it up perfectly. What he is a guy that's going to produce and he's going to work his tail off. Those are the kind of guys that, you know, I think
they still get overlooked.
They do. And it's so frustrating.
It drives you crazy.
It drives you crazy because there are a high number of guys that they miss on.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, college coaches have to admit that because how could you explain Cody Schrader coming to Mizzou and beating out all the guys you off scholarships to, and he was still a walk-on?
Yeah.
Right. How do you explain that?
Because he doesn't fit their checklist on their evaluation process.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an arbitrary one. You know, some of it's based in good science or whatever, but a lot of it is just arbitrary. Right?
Okay. So this is I was talking to some college coaches about this last night, and I won't say the name of the school or the kid. Give you that he's an offensive player, skill player. And I had a coach tell me, hey, if he was a half inch taller, he would have an offer from every school in our conference.
Yeah.
And so I said, well, what metric are you basing that off of? Like, where's that coming from? And he didn't have an answer.
Right.
Because
it's arbitrary.
Because it's arbitrary.
Made up. Yep.
It's and it's what we were talking about last week. It's a slow play in many regards of like, well, he's a half inch short. Well, the guy playing his position in the NFL that was a rookie this year is the exact same size as him.
Mm-hmm.
Why should he get all of his records taken away because he's a half inch too short?
Right.
Should he not be an all pro as a rookie because he's a half inch too short? Or, I mean, it's asinine.
It is asinine.
It's asinine.
It goes back a while. You remember when all the quarterbacks had to be 6'3", 215, right? Yeah. That was the arbitrary numbers that were set, measurables that were set.
Yep.
And now you have guys who are under 6 foot.
I would go to some of those camps and identification camps and watch these big, long guys, absolutely terrible mechanics, terrible. But because they were big and strong and they fit the mold, if you will, they would be the guy getting the attention, or they would get the Elite 11 invite.
It's almost the opposite now.
Now it is the opposite.
You see these for those 6'5", 6'5", 6'6" quarterbacks who are really good and could really rip it. They're getting almost overlooked. They're 100%. Falling down. They're falling down to like MAC schools. A lot of MAC schools are taking those guys. And guess what? They're highly successful there, and they'll still get a chance to play pro ball.
And those guys, by then, the pendulum may have already swung back in the NFL.
Right.
And those guys are going to be the only ones they're picking up, right? Or the vast majority are getting picked up out of conferences that are, you know, placing value on that. Because, you know, mechanics are mechanics, but there's things that people like are overlooking in some of these younger quarterbacks. And like I had a guy call a college coach I was talking to not that long ago, and he was very perplexed. He said, you know, we've recruited a number of kids, and this is at a Power 5 school. We've recruited a number of kids. Or Power 4 now, I guess. These kids have come in quarterbacks, and they look one way on the film, right? He's like very similar to like what the style of quarterbacks you guys have. They get to us, and they've changed their mechanic in that time. So they've gotten together with someone that's now trying to refine their mechanic and teaching them how to flow the ball and throw sidearm and
everybody
all these different arm slots.
Yeah.
And the reality of it is that those people have a gross misunderstanding of the mechanic. And I've heard people say, well, just kind of slot the arm wherever you want. Well, that is, again, a gross misunderstanding of how the mechanic works. That the arm slots based off of your foot mechanics. Your foot mechanics and your footwork travel through the body, and then in turn, they help your arm get in a supported position to throw the ball. And so if your feet are off and then your hips are off and then your upper body's off, yeah, sure, your arm's going to slot real wide. But then at that point, you're just purely making up for your ineptitude and just guessing. And then, it's accurate one throw, it's inaccurate the next. But the coach told me, he's like, look, we've had two of these guys. He's like, they will never play for us. He's like, we got to kind of bounce them out of here, because once you go down that path of lazy mechanics, it's hard to get back to being a tried and true thrower. And you say, well, Tom Brady, he was working on his mechanics to the day he retired.
Correct. And they're not going to take the time with you in college to change your mechanics. No. And that's the thing. And that's why some guy might fit all the other, measurables they're looking for, but they don't like their mechanics. They're not going to bother with them. And that's happened with a lot of guys. And there was I just saw it last year with somebody who wound up going to, a school. It's a good school, but it's not where they should have been. They should have been at a Power 5 school, but they would not change their mechanics. And, you can only say to somebody, hey, you want to do, what you're doing? Oh, yeah, I'm working with so-and-so. And I'm like, okay, I can't tell you, hey, you need to do this, but really you need to do that.
And you got to be real careful with quarterback guys, because I see 1,000 times, okay? I see, oh, well, I'm going to go work with this guy. He trains NFL guys. Well, take a big step back. At what point did he start working with NFL guys? Because he played in the NFL, met some people, and then he does pro scouting or pro preparation for pro days and the draft process. That's a totally different set of parameters than training and refining someone's mechanics. If you don't understand that, and you're playing the game of, well, I'm going to get to this guy because he's connected to these people, at some point you're going to be judged on your mechanic, and you're going to fall short. So,
I mean, you know how it is. You've had college coaches call you and be like, "Yeah, we like this guy, but he the way, just the positioning of his arm when he releases his throw is enough to make them."
Oh, it'll scare him off.
It'll scare him off. And now this is somebody comes to mind who's with another Power 5 school, but this other Power 5 school didn't like that one particular thing, and you were like, "Well, they're crazy."
Yeah.
And I remember being in your office and you even just breaking down the film, and I don't know what they were looking at.
Sometimes I get in conversations with guys. And again, you got to remember, like a college football coach, as you said, most of them, the vast majority, are not mechanics guys. They are people that, are managing a position group, who coach that position group. And they expect people to have certain skill sets that reside within certain parameters, and they need to operate that offense. And so they don't have time to go in and synchronize your mechanics, right? So that's little stuff. They're looking for fit. And so I was talking to one of our quarterbacks yesterday, was back, college quarterback, and we were somehow got on the subject of a particular guy who trains pro quarterbacks for like the draft process.
Mm-hmm.
And a guy that's in the NFL had told him as advice, because this guy should be coming out in the next year or two. He's like, "Oh, dude, it's a waste of time." He's like, "I went to this guy thinking he was super connected. I went 2 weeks, and then I just went back to the guy I used to work with when I was a kid." Because a lot of that stuff is just fluff, right? At the end of the day, like running a script at a pro day, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. The biggest issue is getting where the NFL guys can really help those guys is, front office talk, talking through offenses and calls and memorizing plays. Those guys are excellent at that. That is awesome. But, mind you, they're not mechanical guys. Like, that's not what they do. Like, there's certain guys I see that I admired as quarterbacks, and then you hear them talk about the mechanics, and you realize like they were really good for whatever reason, but it was not because of their knowledge of how to throw a football.
Right.
It's their body's innate ability to throw a football.
Yeah. Some guys can just do it.
Right. And so,
not teach it.
Yeah. And I think that goes the same for all the position groups. O-line and D-line guys talk the exact same way about their processes and learning those skill sets. But if you don't have a really high degree of proficiency coming out of high school, because you're just a good athlete, you're going to get killed in college. It's just, the game is too tough. It's too fast for you to try and acclimate as well as get your skills up to speed. Very few people are able to do that. And the unfortunate truth is kids get fooled in the recruiting process believing, oh, well, I'm a 5-star. I'm a 4-star. They want me. They need me. No, they don't. They do want you. Yeah. They don't need you. They'll find somebody else. Last I checked, they got, numerous guys at your position and maybe in the same recruiting class, if not If not, they got another class coming behind you, and they're going to find someone to replace you if they need to.
It really is. And, that discussion came up last night about offers and who's, rankings and stuff like that and stars and all that. And I know a lot of the young kids that were talking about, man, all these offers going out to the ninth graders and even one eighth grader who got an offer. And I'm like, you know what? That means, you know what those offers are worth at this point in time? Nothing, because they may or may not be there 3-4 years, maybe 5 years down the road when you see guys getting offers. What that is like a marker. We like you. We want, we want to put our marker here on you that you're our guy, and maybe it's not told, but if this is you, if you've peaked, then that's offer's not going to be there. But you have to, here's your offer. You have to keep showing us and keep building off of what we see now in order for that to work out to where that offer is committable.
Correct. And it can, if you are the right guy and you continue to get better and stronger and better and start to work the process, you can get to a point where it's really nice, and you parlay that first early offer as an eighth grader,
and that's memorable.
And you can parlay that into 30, 40 offers.
Right.
But, as we start to get into this, because the official visits are going to start here at the beginning of June, that's when you seniors, you're going to start to know where you are on people's boards with these offers that you have. Because in all reality, you may be sitting there flush thinking you got 10 offers, or you had an offer when you were a freshman or sophomore and still have not communicated with that staff very much. That's a dead giveaway that you really don't have an offer. It might say it on 24/7, but you don't have a verified offer or a committable offer at this point. So if schools aren't reaching out to you about official visits and you're
staying
25,
in contact, right,
that's a problem, because they need to get that stuff cleared. I mean, I know for a fact that there's schools, and it's so problematic for them with how the camp season starts at the beginning of June, late May, early June. Well, that's when they start having these visits. Well, the problem with that is that they need to have their staffs out on the road, and they don't want to lose people on official visits. So it's a balancing act for sure.
Yeah, it's tough, but it just, the deck keeps getting reshuffled. Like I had a young man tell me that he was told he was this number 7 on the board at his position with a particular school. And I'm like, well, just hang in there, because that reshuffles. The guys who are above you, and a lot of them are like high level guys who are probably going to go to the P5 school, instead of an FCS school. I'm like, that's going to reshuffle. So you might move, there's a good chance you move up. There's a good chance they're going to reshuffle that deck of prospects. They're going to look at who they have, who's available out there, and they might offer a completely new group of guys. So you're absolutely right, because I've seen guys who get offered, say last November, right?
Yep.
So by end of summer, middle of summer, that offer is no longer there. Might not be there even earlier than that. And then you see
might never have been there.
And by the start of the season, guess what? They're going to reshuffle it. They're going to go back through the services that they subscribe to, the actual scouting services. They're going to look at their database and their lists, and their recruiting staff's going to reevaluate new guys, because they're constantly getting all this data and information on new guys. And then boom, here comes a whole new set of guys that they evaluate, and they want to go to their games early in the season, and they want to look at early film or whatever. So it's a constantly evolving, constantly changing process. So just because you have picked up an offer a year ago means nothing. And especially like you said, if they're not staying in contact with you, if they're not setting up visits, if they're not having you, come into school multiple times, come to games, whatever like that, then there's a good chance that you need to be looking at who's really involved with you in the recruiting process.
Yeah, and now if you're a guy that's a freshman gets a big offer, and then all of a sudden starts getting some offers trailing in around it, 9 times out of 10 you're going to be a guy that becomes a national guy, and that's great. But
that's a big but.
The way that things have changed so fast, and again, this is a lot of the knowledge we have is because of the kids we're working with. But I have it on fairly good authority. One of the top players coming out of St. Louis last year had offers from all over the country, right? You name it, the who's who.
Mm-hmm.
When it came down to signing day, he had 2 legitimate offers left where they had space for him. 2.
Absolutely. Happens all the time.
Decommitted from one, went to the other. But that's it. That's the way it works. And you go, oh, well, no, he had 75 offers. Yes, but they are full and they have transfer portal guys coming in, and that's just how it works. And so you have to be really hip to the game. If you think
you have to know how to manage it well,
and you got to talk to people that know, because, I like to keep up on everything. I know you do as well. And there's things coming down the pipeline that by this midsummer, it may completely have changed what we know, because there's a major piece of, let's call it, well, it's in the courts, right? And then it may lead to some legislation down line. But the NCAA is locked in a really, really tough lawsuit right now, and they're on the hook for, I think, $2.9 billion in damages to past athletes for pay that they should have given them. And that's going to lead, step right into the antitrust components. And then the NCAA is going to find itself in a real pickle. And so some of the solutions they're coming up with is, hey, we're going to start paying the athletes from the schools. Remember we talked a few weeks ago about how they had the gravy train going. They have, outside organizations paying for their kids through collectives. And they have other organizations like local marketing and businesses paying for their kids to be there and incentivizing them to be in that community. And now we're caught in a situation where they're going to have to start paying money potentially, but that's one of their solutions.
Just full on pro football.
And so the problem then becomes, and this we talked about, they have issues with Title IX and how they're going to pay athletes. So what they're going to have to do, and the article I was reading, I was talking to a friend of mine about, it might do away with walk-ons altogether, which you go, oh, what's the matter? Well, you got to understand, walk-ons complete teams. They fill teams in, because where the coaches have missed and screwed up, there's other guys that have walked on into the organization that in practice give as good of a look, if not better looks, than the guys that are quote unquote scholarship guys, right? A guy like Cody Schrader would never, in that environment, never even been able to get into college football. He walked on, right? And so now, at that level, and so now a guy like him would be, stopped. That would be gone. And so the legislation essentially, or the legal settlement would essentially be, hey, we're going to start paying 20% of our budget towards the athletes. But they haven't stipulated how they would spread it out. There's different scenarios of how they would do that. But if you think about it, like the only two real revenue sports in college sports are football and basketball.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, everybody else is pretty much there because of those sports pay for them to be there. And so, and it's not like these schools magically have money to just go ahead and pay out of the kindness of their hearts, for women's golf, which my niece plays, to have this money, right? There has to be an underlying revenue stream to support that. And so unfortunately that's going to force some things. And they're talking as early as this July is when this could be decided. Again, back to what you and I were saying, in my opinion, this will probably lead to the busting of what we know of the NCAA today. And it's going to turn into something completely different, where the football guys become their own entity and they rule as they rule, because then if they're outside the purview of the NCAA, there's going to be a little bit different rules, I would imagine, for their league, if you will. It's its own professional football league. So, NFL does not need to pay for men's tennis.
Right.
They don't have to. They don't have to subsidize sand volleyball. Right. So when they break away, that will be their clean break, and they can do what they want to do, and the schools will still partake and make a ton of money off of them. So we're living in a crazy time. There's a lot of moving parts, but rest assured, if you're a kid that wants to work and train and develop and do what you need to do, the sky's the limit. But if you're just pretending and acting as if, I didn't know I had to do all that. Yeah. Everybody knows. Listen, we all know when you sign up to play football, you sign up to coach football, what's in store, right? You can't act ignorant to the fact that you didn't know you were supposed to be ready for this camp, or you weren't supposed to do this, or whatever it might be. you have to show up prepared. Like, and there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So,
well, you can't just do the basics anymore.
Nope.
You can't just show up and, okay, I'm going to go to my high school practice and I'm going to go to my high school. If you want to play college ball, you have to do more. So over the past 3 weeks, I've seen over 800 players, 800 high school players that I've been able to watch and evaluate and see them come out there and compete and work. All of that stuff, right? All of those competitions, all the combines and the showcase last night, those guys won it. Okay. And I don't care if I hurt somebody's feelings. They wanted a little bit more than the average guy on the team who doesn't do anything outside of just what he basically has to do. So those guys talk about, oh yeah, I want to play college ball, because you'll hear them say that too. Oh yeah, I'd like to play college ball. Well, yeah, everybody would like to play college ball.
I'd love to win the lottery.
I'd love to be a rock star. I would love to be a movie star. I would love, win the lottery. But it's who's going to do what is necessary to make that happen. And those guys we saw last night, those guys we saw at the previous 3 KC varsity combines, the elite combine, guys who were going to Lindenwood, they won it the most. And guess who winds up getting the offers? You hear people say, oh, well, why is he getting offers? Well, he shows up. He does the extra. He trains. He shows up at events. He showcases his skills and his ability. He competes, because that competition, even if you're not getting that stuff, makes you better. It'll make you a better player on your team. College coaches will see that, and that's how you're on your way. That's how that all happens, especially in 2024.
Yeah, and everybody's got an excuse if they want to make it.
Yeah.
Like I was talking to a couple of our coaches, and they'd asked a few kids, like, hey, where were you last night?
Yeah.
And the common refrain is, I
outside of I didn't know about it.
I had practice, and I didn't know about it.
I didn't know about it.
Part of life is opening up and asking questions and being open to learning things about, the process of what you say you want to do. And so that doesn't mean you have to go to every single thing, but there's viable and legitimate reasons of why you can't make things. Yep. But I would tell you, the vast majority of kids in particular, they don't go because either someone said, oh, it's a bad idea, you don't need to go, right? Because they didn't have all the facts, whoever told them that. Or it's one of those situations where they're just not in tune enough and things are passing them by, and they're just letting the world just kind of come at them versus, taking some simple initiative and saying, okay, what do I need to do? I want to be a college football player. I want to be a business owner. I want to be a dentist, whatever it might be. There are steps that you must take to become a dentist.
Yep.
Or a business owner. In football, that's what we're doing this show. We are talking about steps that you should be taking if you want to play the game of football.
There are opportunities,
right,
to help you along that way. So, starting with elite, training at elite, training with finding a trainer that works for you, going to the elite combine, KC varsity combines, the showcase, the St. Louis Football Metro coaches thing, Lindenwood, boom, and all that stuff I just mentioned prior to Lindenwood. That's preparing you for the big stage of Lindenwood. Okay, which it's such a great thing to watch, because I see kids come off the stage, talk to a coach, come over to me, and they say, Minnesota just offered, Mizzou just offered, William Jewell,
Lindenwood offered,
yeah, and it's such a great thing to see, because really, our involvement in that's kind of really what we're doing it for, is to see that happen for guys.
And JP, let me ask you this: if you're a guy who over the last number of months has been a coach is seeing you put these videos out of you training every Sunday, and there's a picture of JP takes you at the facility because hey, look at this guy, and it's going into his reports, right?
Yep.
So then you have that, right? That's been going on since January. Then you have the top performers at the Elite Football Combine. Boom. Oh, your picture's in there. Oh, your video's in there. Oh, you posted a bunch of clips of you kicking guys' butts or throwing good balls, whatever it might be. Then you go KC varsity. You do the same thing there, right?
Yeah.
And then you see some of those coaches there. Then you go to the St. Louis Metro football coaches. You see some of these guys there. Then you show up at Lindenwood, these guys already know part of your story because they've been seeing you now for the last month or two.
They're looking
in
for
person.
You. Yeah.
They've seen you as well digitally as well online. And take it back a step further. They've seen you with your highlight film from last fall because you worked your butt off and you prepared for last season. So you have to tell a story, and your story has to be very compelling for them, and it's got to meet certain standards, and it also has to have some compelling argument as to why they should choose you over someone else.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the beauty of football. They need all different shapes and sizes, but they don't need every player that plays high school football to play college football. They'll do just fine with the 5 or 6% that they get.
Absolutely. And what's interesting is hearing the college coaches talk, right? They know what's going on. They were talking about guys and they knew about them from the digital stuff, from the recent combines. Okay. They knew. They're like, hey, that guy looks really good. They're like, yeah, well, last week he won the lineman challenge. He was named the king of the king of all the linemen that were there. They knew about him. So they were asking, hey, where's Wright City, Missouri at? Right. They're like, I've never heard. Where's Wright City? And so
and the high school coach was there.
Yes, high school coach was there, so they were able to talk to him. But they're like, "What was?" And so they were fixated on that kid. And guess what? They liked him. Like, gonna have to go by his school.
And what's interesting about that is too. I watched Mason walk over to a couple of coaches, and one of the things he said, and if I'm a coach, I just eat it up. And he was very authentic. He just goes, "Oh, I wouldn't miss this. I'm a worker bee. I get after it. Like, I love doing this. I love competing. I want to test myself." Because every day at practice in college, that's what you're going to do. You're going to be testing yourself and being tested. And, far too many kids get caught up in the recruiting process and fail to understand that the whole reason you're being recruited is because you're going to be pushed harder than you've ever been pushed playing college football. College football is not a joke. It's just not some aspirational, inspirational thing you want to put on your Twitter feed and Instagram feed. It is a way of life for players. It is a way of life. Once you leave your parents' home and you're in college, if you're playing college football, it's no holds barred. It is a legitimate job, hence the reason why they're talking about paying, and they are paying through collectives. It is a full-time job. So if you're not prepared for that and you just want to have fun playing high school football, have at it.
Right.
Okay. And honestly, just stop wasting people's time and telling them you want to do it when your actions don't follow what you say you want to do. And so, because I don't know that you can get through playing college football half speed.
That's all they care about.
Half-hearted.
That's all those college coaches care about. They knew Mason Went won King of the Hill of Kansas City Varsity Combine. They were just college coaches were standing there talking about it. They knew Chase Wisecarver was there and did well. They were pinpointing him out. They knew Carter was a finalist amongst the King of the Hill. So they know what's going on. They know what you attend. They know what you're doing. They know what you do well at. So all of these are opportunities that you really need to take advantage of. They're there for you. And so when I hear guys who are telling me, "Oh yeah, next time," there may not be a next time. Next year. There's a lot of next year guys.
If you're going to be a senior, there's no next year unless you're doing the JUCO or non-committed player camp.
Heard guys say, "Man, I wish I would have come to the KC Varsity Combine, that King of the Hill event. I think I would have done well." Well, why didn't you come?
And that's the other thing. The guys that are rising freshmen, so 8th graders right now, do not sleep and go, "Oh, I'm going to do this next year."
There were a bunch of those guys out there.
Don't do that. I'm just going to do that next year. I'm just going to do it next year. No. Do it now so that you're used to doing it. You only get 4 shots at it. Let's just speaking at the Lindenwood, you get 4 off seasons to get recruited. Okay. Yes. The most important thing you can do for yourself is put up high quality varsity game film. That trumps everything because that gets a lot of incentive and view and eyeballs on you. But that being said, you can also get offers if you're doing all the right things. Dylan Duff's a great example. He didn't have very little, if any, varsity game film last year, showed up prepared, worked his butt off leading up to the camp, working out as well as throwing, shows up to the camp, gets offered, and now he's, rest is history. He's committed to play at a Power 4 school. So yes, it can happen, but the vast majority of what has to happen has to take place on the field and then in 4 off seasons, really. So
yeah, you don't want to wait until guys going into their senior year. Now I see guys right now saying, this is my last ride. I'm gonna do this. It's like, where have you been? And because good luck, because it doesn't happen like that.
Unless you are some guy that possesses some freak amount of size,
right?
Like and this is what this hurts a lot of people and they don't understand. Okay, you could wait till your senior year and come out if you are the guy that is 6'5", 6'6", 6'7",
230-pound offensive lineman, played basketball mostly.
Yep. Oh, he can catch the ball.
Yep.
How does he look with his hand on the ground, running around the offensive lineman? Oh, okay. That guy will get a shot. The guy that is the 6'2" kid that's playing basketball that comes out, that's a receiver, that does not know how to run routes and is just a good athlete and go up over the top of people, is not going to get the same viewpoint because they already have guys similar to him that know how to run routes, right? And know how to get open. So you have to be very careful, like playing the game of recruiting and getting yourself thinking too highly of yourself, right? Be realistic. They can do a program without you. Okay. So be excited when you get offers, but be judicious about how you decide where you want to go play college football, because you might not fit at every single school. And believe me, that tweet that makes you feel so good and gives you the dopamine rush about whoever you committed to, if it's a bad commitment, you'll either find your way out of there because they're going to ask you to leave, or you're going to realize you're in the wrong end of the pool and there's no life support for you, no floaties to help get you out of there.
Yeah.
And you got to beg to leave and be done with it, right?
The committing and the signing should not be your end game.
No.
That's just the beginning.
Not at all. Yeah, it's just very beginning. And so
many guys, though, and it, were like, oh, man, I committed to such and such a school. I had everybody at my school. We released balloons, some doves. The local TV news was there. I'm the man, and then whatever happened to is their story later on down.
Well, yeah. And then what happened to them is they got to college and realized they had to play football. And so the kiss of death, for the high school guys, we see guys all the time that work their butts off until they get that offer, right? There's a group of guys right now that have been working since January. We won't see them much after June or July.
Yeah.
Okay. Because they're going to get their offers and they're going to be like, oh, I got my offer. Yeah, I don't need to go train because I'm going to college to play football.
Yeah.
That is the exact wrong idea. The idea should be, oh my God, I need to work harder than I've ever worked to attain what I need to attain, because the pool of people you were competing against before was big, but we've taken all the hanger-ons and all the low-level guys, gotten them out of there. The mid-level guys have been weeded out, and now the high-level guys are left remaining. And you're going to compete against those guys. That's who you're competing against. You're not competing against the 95% of guys in your high school that won't play college football.
Yeah.
You're competing against the 5 or 6% from the other schools that were just like you. If they kept working and you didn't, it's over.
Right. What blows my mind is there are some guys who will just get an offer or two when they are freshmen or sophomores. They will quit working. You know what I mean? They will quit coming to train. They will quit coming. And you see it. They will quit coming to events. And
they come as celebrities.
They come as they want to stand and observe, right? They want to come and stand and observe. And usually if you see them, you'll be like, here, hold this camera.
Yeah, right. But the thing is, they're there, shaking hands and like a politician.
Glad handing everybody. Yeah, exactly. But I'm telling you what, a lot of these guys who you're reading about, who you're hearing about, they came to the elite combine as freshmen
100%.
Or sophomores, and that next year they get that invite. Hey, you want to come back and compete? Crickets.
Mm-hmm.
Crickets. Some will say yeah, some do. Tristan Abram, guy who came back compete. Charles Brooks came and compete, killed it, and they were named all-stars because they, but they wanted that. They wanted that smoke. They wanted to compete.
Yep.
And it's a battle. The elite combine, Casey Varsity, these guys are in there competing hard. It's a fight.
They pound each other. I tell you what, the one-on-ones last night.
Yeah.
there were some really nice plays. And this is the other thing to talk about. I'll put it out there. I think our defensive back coaches like to hear this. If you are a marginal receiver, which the vast majority of high school receivers are marginal receivers, you should really consider learning how to play defensive back.
Yes.
Okay. In our facility, we have 3 guys that coach defensive back. They are able to help guys transition because there's so much congestion at the receiver position for college. There's not nearly as much. If you're like that guy at 6 foot to 6'2",
right,
and you have some athleticism, you might want to learn it. I'm not saying you have to give receiver up altogether, but you need to learn how to play defensive back because it's really hard, when you watch. And there were so few balls dropped last night.
Right.
Like very good quarterback play.
There's also a lot of guys that want to play receiver. There's always a dearth of defensive backs. In fact,
4 times the kids want to play receiver than
last night. What was so cool, and you even pointed out about one kid, but you had guys who play receiver who were jumping over. You had at least one quarterback, I think 2 of them did, jumped in there and played defensive back. And guess what? Guys will see that. College coaches will see that. And they're like, hey, look at that guy compete. Look at that guy wanting to help, wanting to work.
Yep. And if you're an athlete, they'll find you, right? If you're a guy that's a competitor, they'll find you. And so that's what I love about those events where you kind of start to see like somebody's smart enough to realize like, hey, there's not enough DBs. I can play DB. I want to get some reps. I think, and you and I noticed it, the coaches notice it.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's one of those things where if you're just open-minded to the process, and not every quarterback can play defensive back. I get it.
Right.
But and do well. But just be open-minded and don't walk through life with your eyes closed.
Right.
A lot of you guys, that's what you're doing.
It is what you're doing. And like in Kansas City last weekend, there was an offensive lineman who was getting reps, but there were defensive linemen who I will say this, there were too many tentative defensive linemen who did not want to step up and take their rep. They were perfectly fine standing at the end of the line, staying behind the crowd. This offensive lineman was getting reps as offensive lineman. He flipped over. In fact, the O-line coach is like, you traitor, and he got reps at D-line because nobody was stepping up. And he wanted to showcase to what he was capable of as a player, as a teammate, as a competitor. And that opened a bunch of eyes. And he looked good. He actually looked good, pretty good as a defensive lineman too. But it was that fire and that drive. And something I heard a lot about guys like Carter Burdell, Mike Cunningham, who picked up an offer from Colgate, Mason Went, Chase Wisecarver, all these guys who I heard, names bantied about and guys were watching. Man, they really like to compete. That's what they heard. Guess what? They go to pretty much everything that they possibly can. And they're regular trainers.
Well, and so like they know how to do one-on-ones.
Yep.
And you have a lot of people poo-poo like, oh, the one-on-one, I don't like that. Well, that's the game that they play. Yes, you don't allow bull rushing. That can happen from time to time, but and you want to minimize it as best you can. But if you've watched an NFL practice, they don't practice in pads, right? They do a lot of full speed, high speed, pass pro, all of that, right? They have to, right? So they're not banging all the time with their pads on and helmets on, but they learn how to do that. And so, guys that poo-poo it don't understand. At some point, those guys, that is a viable drill, right? And so, we do it. We don't like to, we like to have quarterbacks when we're drilling it in our facility. We like to have a live quarterback so they can learn how to move in the pocket.
Yep.
And again, quarterbacks, if you are training and you're not doing anything with live rushes or passive aid, other than a person chasing you with a broom or stepping in front of you doing contrived movements, like you're wasting your time. You have to be in an environment where people, every single play as a quarterback, you're going to be rushed. That's the game you play. So if you're not spending a good chunk of your off season working on how to move in the pocket properly, how to set blocks up for your favor and not for your, displeasure of getting smoked by somebody, there's a sequence. It's a skill set, and you have to work on it. You don't want to let that. You don't want to work on that in season when they're teeing off on you. You want to work on it now so you're used to moving and understanding why when you moved this way, how it influenced the lineman when you move versus this way. So that is a huge deal, and it also helps the linemen and D linemen because it's more realistic. And so there's so much to the game. It's simple if you just show up, but there's so much to it that so many people think they know, and they are so far from reality of how you develop athletes.
Yeah, and it also really helps with technique. You're not allowing bull rushing, and unfortunately, when you go to events, that's everybody's primary goal in high school. Thing in high school, they want to bull, and you see who actually trains versus who doesn't. He has a little bit of technique, and guess who wins the events? The guys with the best technique. King of the Hill, those guys all had good technique.
Yep.
I mean, doesn't hurt that they're really good athletes, big giant guys. But the guys with the technique, and if the guy who may slide through there and win with just the bull rush, he gets exposed when he comes against a good offensive line.
Guys that know what they're doing, right?
Guys that know what they're doing. Absolutely, that's how these guys win. That's the previous couple of King of the Hill guys. That's what they were, man. They were great technicians.
Yep, and technique rules the day, whether that's quarterback, offensive line, defensive line. I mean.
Saw a lot of that last night. I mean, it was the offensive line's day. You kind of knew that, but man, those guys were just on it, and you could tell that the coaches were impressed.
Yeah, Coach Pond does an excellent job with those O linemen, and it is interesting. I mean, it is a pain in the butt when you're getting beat most of the time by the linemen and the O linemen, and a lot of guys want to shy away from that. I would
There's
say
a reason for that, though.
I would say that you really need to dig in and learn the ins and outs of what's going to work, and take the coaching that you're getting, and don't be afraid to fail. Like, there's so many guys right now in this era that are so scared to fail. Like, they don't want it to be put on YouTube or Instagram or Snapchat or whatever it might be. Who cares? Like, do you think your career is going to be ended by having a mistake in a drill that 99% of the people watching have no idea what they're watching? Sure, they're going to put comments about it, but who cares? They don't know what they're talking about. A coach that knows what he's looking at is going to be like, oh, I could correct that. Or, you know what, I know what he was trying to do. So one thing Coach Pond's always talking about is don't be concerned about winning the rep. Be concerned about working on the things we've been working on with you.
Getting better.
So you can then take it to the drawing board if it doesn't work, and we can redo it and do it and refine it till we get to the point where we own the skill set. And that's the same thing with throwers. Like, I always tell our guys, don't let one bad throw turn into two, right? So let's reassess and assess what we did wrong on that throw, why we missed, and move on, right? So you got to be able to self-correct and not, implode because you're upset about a particular rep.
Yeah.
Right?
Pond's great. Speaking of which, special shout outs to Michael Rose Ivy over at KC Varsity Combine this past weekend. Just a great teacher, a defensive line teacher. Just did a great job with them. And what's fascinating about Michael Rose is that he's one of the first guys that came to the elite combine that we did, that we invited.
I remember him.
Was a linebacker, came in there and just really tore it up and wound up going to Nebraska.
Yep.
And now he's coaching. He's giving back to the game. Oh yeah, just he was fun to watch. Just the way that he teaches kids. And the technique that he teaches was just great. So shout out to him and Jamie Pond, all the coaches. Last night, your coaches were great again.
Yeah, Ray Golden was digging in there deep with those D linemen. And it's competitive. You want to see the D linemen want to see their guys win, right? And the O line coaches want to see their guys win.
Yeah,
but it's all for the kids to improve.
Yeah. Oh, it wasn't. Yeah, and at these KC Varsity Combines, even at elite, you see the coaches. They might as it's like, well, why don't you guys line up? Because they're just as competitive, wanting their guys to win, and they start jawing with each other over stuff, and so it's a lot of fun. Lindenwood's coming up. That's next. That's the Big Daddy coming up next. I told some kids last night, when you go up to a coach, or if a coach comes up to you, and I see a lot of this, and it's it happens to me too. You ask a coach asks you your name if you're a player. Tell them your first and last name. Don't say Chris. And don't make a coach say, Chris what? Say, I'm Chris Jones. I play at Winfield, Missouri. I'm a whatever.
Tell them your class.
Tell them your class. Yeah, everything. Give them as much information as possible. But I see too much of this. A coach or myself will come up and ask a player, what's your name? John. You got a last name, John? I mean, that right there is an impression that they're going to get from you, that first impression. So you want to say your name, you want to say it loud, and you want to be very proud, and you want to extend your hand to the coach if somebody asks you your name.
Shake his hand.
Doesn't matter
Look him in his
tired.
eyes. Shake his hand.
Doesn't matter if you just, ran your 40 and you're out of breath, whatever. Shake his hand, look him in the eye, and say your full name. That's my tip for the day.
I agree. And do not be afraid to talk to him.
No.
Hey, we need to bring up a major piece of news that happened this week with football in the state of Missouri.
Missouri State
is going to the FBS Conference USA. I mean, I think that is long overdue to have 2 Division I, schools, FBS schools in the state. It's huge, and I think from the sounds of it, like they got in the nick of time, because it sounds like it's going to be really difficult for FCS schools to get into that FBS
going forward.
Going forward. So, you and I were tipped off last year. A couple kids that had offers from them. They were being told as part of the process of recruiting them that, hey, it wasn't official, but they were moving to the FBS at some point. And to see that come to fruition is just awesome. I think
it is awesome. You see it in their recruiting. You could tell they're like, well, they're going after these kids. They're moving up.
Yeah. Right? And I sure hope that they really reconnect in St. Louis. There's times they've had waves of where they've done really well in St. Louis, and then they've gone south and kind of stayed out of the area. Yeah. Hopefully that will be a rebirth, and they'll be able to get in St. Louis and start to really recruit some of the top guys out of the state, and guys will stay home.
Yeah, they're doing that. I'm seeing them more in Kansas City now as well. And so, they're opening it up. They're expanding. Yeah, because you couldn't, back in the day, I guess they could just recruit like Southwest Missouri, Oklahoma, Arkansas,
Northwest
Texas.
Arkansas,
yep, like that. But man, I'll tell you what, the time flies by. Another fun time getting to be here and talk to everybody. And tell you what, over the past 3 weeks, whether it was in Kansas City or last night or here for the St. Louis Casey Barnes, all I'm hearing is just like, really love the show, really love the information, really love the insights, because people, they don't know what they don't know. And so it's fun to bring it to you. We will be here.
Hey, a little tease.
Yeah.
Last night, a special shout out. The guys from First Form were there.
Yeah, I saw them.
Talked nutrition, talked about fueling the athletes, gave out tons of samples to kids. So shout out to those guys. They're always first class, helping out in community events. Really, and they were there to the very end. Like, we've been at plenty of these things, and you have people that are there and they're out well before the thing ends, right? Before the event's over.
As soon as everybody hits the field.
Yeah, right. It's kind of over. So they were there. But as a tease for next week, we're going to have someone on from their organization to talk more about, his story, but importantly, how, supplementation and nutrition play a huge, vital role in athletic development. So looking forward to that.
All right. Sounds good. Where can everybody find you, reach you online?
Twitter is Elite Football, and Instagram is Elite Football Academy.
You catch me JP Rock MO on X/Twitter. JP Rock Scout you on Instagram, and of course the show Football 360 Show on X, on Instagram as well.
Instagram.
Yep. Where else? Facebook,
Spotify.
Yeah, but I'm talking about the socials.
The socials.
Yeah.
So it's Football 360 Show is for the Twitter, Instagram, and I believe Facebook.
No TikTok yet.
No TikTok.
no TikTok yet. But
we're waiting to see if it gets banned.
Exactly. It might be kicked off.
Yeah.
It might be kicked off that anyway.
We might be the last straw.
Yep. Great talking to you, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your week. Stay safe, and we will talk to you next Tuesday. See ya.